Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this
Recording
regular
in
meeting
progress.
of Central Nevada Regional Water Authority. This is Friday, December 6th. We are in the Commission Chambers in Fallon, Churchill County, and we thank them, as always, for being so generous with the use of their facility. Jeff, will you please do the roll call?
Commissioner Ghetto? Mr. Olson? Vice Chair Frey? Commissioner Steninger? Commissioner Bruff?
I'm here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Keys? Ms. Boland? Mr. Wagonseller? Commissioner Plaskett? Mr. Etchegary? Mr. Gallagher? Commissioner Haas?
He's here. I see his.
Okay. Commissioner Thomas? Commissioner Strickland?
Here, good morning.
Good morning. Mr. Miller? Commissioner Hudson?
Here.
Mr. Mancebo? Mr. Evans? Commissioner Carson?
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. Mr. Odgers?
Present.
Mr. Barbie? Mr. Tibbetts? Commissioner Helming? Commissioner Hill? Commissioner Vogler?
And me.
And you, Madam Chair.
I'm here,
Thank you.
I think.
So we
Jeff,
have,
did you get me? This is Nancy. Did you get me? I was walking in the room. I thought I heard my name.
okay, we got you now.
Okay.
I think we have a quorum.
Yes, we do.
All right. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Start your engines. I want to welcome Dee Helming, who is joining us in person this morning. She was an alternate from Lander County, but we had a member step down, correct? So could you turn your mic on?
JR didn't make it through the election, so he just quit.
Yeah, okay.
So,
All right, well, we're happy to have you join us. Thank you.
thank you.
Jeff, do you have anything? No? We'll move to public comment, which is item number 2. This is an opportunity for the public to have their comments read into the record. We don't take any action on those comments until they have been agendized for action. Is there any general public comment? Hearing none, public comment is closed. Moving to item 3, the approval of the agenda. We are going to take 2 items out of order today. We're just going to reverse 7 and 8. So we will be hearing number 8 first, and then we will move on to number 7. So we're just going to switch those 2. All right, Jeff, anything else? Item number 4, which is to elect the chair for the coming year of CNRWA. I lead off this item the same way every single year. I can't believe a year went that fast. I can't. And I will open up the floor for nominations.
I would like to nominate our present chairman, Joni.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Roger, second by Norm Frey, Commissioner Mancebo, Commissioner Frey, to nominate Joni Eastley for chair, and I thank you for that nomination. I'll just say as an aside, Next year, we will celebrate our 20th anniversary as CNRWA, so 20 years. And I have been your chair for 20 years. And it would never hurt my feelings if someone else wanted to step up and do this job. So are there any other nominations? Hearing none, is there any opposition to that motion? With no opposition, that motion passes. Thank you, I appreciate it. It was Norm. Item 5 is the election of the vice chair for CNRWA. Your current vice chair is Norm Frey, and we will open up the floor for nominations.
I would nominate Norm Frey.
You would nominate Norm Frey. There's a motion by Commissioner Mancebo to nominate Norm Frey. Is there a second to his motion?
This is
This
Nancy.
is Lori Carson. Oh, go ahead, Nancy.
We have seconds and thirds. But
We're all seconding.
Ralph Keyes, Commissioner Keyes from Esmeralda beat you to the punch.
Well, all three of us. Okay.
All right.
Are there any other nominations? You do accept, don't you?
I would.
Yeah, no parole for you either. Is there any opposition to that motion? With no opposition, that motion passes, and we move to item 6, which is the consent agenda. There's a lengthy consent agenda this time. Are there any items any member of the board would like to have pulled for individual discussion? Is there a motion on consent?
Madam Chair, if I may, just before you take the motion, I did send out an invoice. It's invoice 1054 from Leonard Law yesterday, so I'd like to try to have that included as part of this agenda item 6II under the financial
Did
report,
everybody
quarterly
see that?
expenditures.
The invoice, okay. Thanks, Jeff. Is there a motion on consent?
I would move to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
But your
Or with
mic
the
is off.
modification.
Can you turn your mic on and say that again?
I move to approve the consent agenda as modified.
And I'll second.
That was a motion by Commissioner Frey, and who seconded that motion?
Commissioner Hudson.
Commissioner Hudson seconds. Any questions concerning the motion? Any additional discussion? Any opposition to that motion? With no opposition, that motion passes, and we are on to item number 8, which we are taking out of sequence. This is possible selection of legal counsel to provide CNRWA legal analysis of and advice regarding issues and developments that may arrive in Nevada water law and policy. And Jeff, I'm going to turn the floor over to you so you can introduce and discuss this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is an effort that was started back in April when this board directed me or approved me going forward with an RFP for legal counsel to assist the authority on analysis and review of policies, regulations, bills, things of that nature that we work with or need to address during the legislative session, but also oftentimes in the interim as things get ramped up for the legislative session and there are various proposals and drafts, and then eventually bills and amendments and so forth. And then also on the regulatory side as well. This board approved a budget of $20,000 in total for legal services, but in the past we have budgeted 10 specifically for this purpose, and then the additional $10,000 that's in the budget for legal services would go towards potentially other legal matters that this board might want to get involved with, as for example the agenda item regarding participating in an amicus brief. So after that time, I did reach out in, I think, October to 3 attorneys, and They are, I think, all on the Zoom today. And this is really more of an informal RFI process because it's pretty limited in terms of how we reached out to various attorneys. But I did reach out to 3 attorneys that I have worked with during my time with CNRWA, and all 3 attorneys have at some point, I think, provided services to the CNRWA board or have provided some level of assistance to this board on various water matters. And these are 3 attorneys that I believe are, definitely top-tier attorneys, very experienced, have proven track records. And again, I've worked with all of them at one point or another. So Debbie Leonard, Leonard Law, is one of the attorneys. Teresa Erie Sticks, representing Schroeder Law Office, is another. And then Simeon Herskovitz, Advocates for Community and Environment, is the 3rd attorney. And you may recall this board did have an agreement with Mr. Herskovitz and the Advocates for Community and Environment early on. So again, all 3 very good attorneys, and CNRWA would be well served by any of them, quite frankly. And so what I asked the chair and vice chair to allow me to do was to engage the NACO, the Freudian slip there. Yeah. The Central Nevada Regional Water Authority Legislative Committee to help me review the responses and at some point, if they were comfortable enough, actually ranking the responses or the attorneys based on those responses. And they did so at a meeting this past Monday, or this Monday on December 2nd. And I asked the committee to really focus on the 4 key questions that we requested the attorneys respond to, and the RFP is part of the packet, which includes the background and CNRWA scope of work, and then 4 questions regarding the key individuals who will be working on this effort, a description of the firm or attorney's qualifications and experience, and a question regarding the ability of the firm or attorney to provide timely responses, particularly during legislative session where, sometimes we have 24 hours or less to review maybe a bill or a bill amendment. And then lastly, a list of any potential or existing conflicts that may impact the ability for your firm or the attorney to provide legal services to CNRWA, and if so, how those conflicts might get resolved. So the attorneys were present at that meeting, and questions were asked by the committee, and then the committee did rank the attorneys based on their responses, and the first ranked attorney was Debbie Leonard, followed by Schroeder Law, represented by Teresa Erie Sticks, and Advocates for Community and Environment, represented by Simeon Herskovitz. So that was the ranking, and I made clear to all 3 attorneys, as well as everyone else, that it is ultimately the decision of this board to select one or another, or maybe none of the attorneys, for the agreement to provide these services. And so that's the matter before you today. The other issue that came up during the committee meeting, and I guess the recommendation ultimately also was to consider the potential for having an agreement with a primary legal counsel for these matters, and then having another agreement with an attorney to address any potential conflicts that might come up. In other words, if there is a conflict with the attorney that you may select today and the CNRWA board on an issue, could be as simple as a specific bill or even a bill amendment, for example, then it would be helpful for the board to have a conflict attorney to help advise us in that matter. I don't know how often or if that would ever come up, but I think it's just probably a pretty good idea for the board to at least consider that. Beyond that, the only other comment I would make is that, again, the contract amount as listed in the agenda would be for not to exceed $10,000. And while I did not specifically ask for costs as part of the proposals, because we wanted this board to really base its decision as well as the legislative committee's recommendation on qualifications, experience, and the other factors that, related to their professional abilities. All three attorneys did provide their costs, and all three of them are well within, what I would consider reasonable costs, hourly fees and overall costs. And I think that's probably what I'd want to say about all this. And I don't know if Vice Chair Frey would like to comment with regard to the recommendations of the legislative committee that he chairs.
We had a very, very good discussion. All three attorneys, fantastic. We all have experience with them. It just came down, that's the recommendations that we made were Debbie Leonard and then Schroeder, then Simeon. I use the first names because we have known them so long. But all very well qualified. I thank my committee for their good participation and good questions, because we learned a lot during that committee. And all three attorneys volunteered to leave while we had our discussion. So that leaves it to a very good open discussion. And I appreciate that. They don't have to. It was a public meeting. Also, I'd like to disclose that I've had a long relationship since 1993 with the Schroeder Law Offices, and even ended up finding out that we're very distant cousins in that process.
Can everybody on the phone hear Norm?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Yeah, loud and clear for me too.
so anyway, I would make the motion to approve Leonard Law Offices as our first primary, and to go down the list as if we have a conflict, or Leonard Law Offices has a conflict, to use one of the others, and that would be over and use some of the money outside of the $10,000 to hire a contingency attorney if we need it.
Did you have a specific recommendation for conflict, or just leave it open-ended? To draw from the list, should a conflict...
Draw from the list.
Okay.
Draw from the list.
Draw from the list meaning both, or one, or the other?
Just go
Your-
down the list.
your mic's off.
If ERS has a conflict, then Teresa or Schroeder Law Offices has a conflict, then we would go to Simeon Herskovitz.
So we would have agreements with...
Your mic is off.
Sorry.
Just so I'm clear, we would have agreements with all three attorneys, with Debbie Leonard or Leonard Law being the main attorney, primary, and then have two?
Correct. Have two contingencies.
Two conflict
It's
attorneys?
a small
Two
state.
conflict.
It's
Yeah.
easy to end up with a conflict.
Okay.
Does that sound workable?
I think so. We might want to hear from the attorneys, though, if that's okay.
I would ask to hear from the attorneys. I see them all.
Hi, this is Debbie Leonard. I appreciate the opportunity to be considered. I think CNRWA would be well served by any of us. And, the order of addressing conflicts in order of ranking is, I have obviously no objection to that.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
this is Simeon. Sorry, Therese, were you about to speak?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, as third and last on the list, I'll just say that's all agreeable to us as well. You know, we understand, we appreciate the opportunity to provide information and potentially provide some advice to CNRWA as we have in the past. And I totally understand and respect the legislative committee's ranking and decision to go in the order they have. So, you know, as the one who would come last, we certainly could work with that and would accept it without any problem.
Good morning. This is Teresa Sticks, and thank you for letting us have an opportunity to speak. I agree. I think you would be well served with any of us, and I have no objections to the conflict ranking or going down the list. I agree it's a small state, and I wouldn't blame the committee for having alternates to be able to assist when the time comes up, because as noted, these things move fast. So thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate your comments on that and the willingness to work. This organization really does some magnificent work, and we've learned over time that some of these types of things simplify it if we get them taken care of ahead of time. Thank you. And I would ask for a second.
Yes, Norm has a motion on the floor. Does everybody understand the motion? Is there a second to Norm's motion?
Second the motion.
Second by Marty Plaskett. Questions concerning the motion? Any additional discussion? Is there any opposition to that motion? With no opposition, that motion passes. We are on to item number 7, which is the possible approval of an agreement between CNRWA and Nina Laxalt. Jeff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as everyone knows, I'm sure, starting in February, our legislature will meet. I think they're the 83rd. It's the 83rd legislative session. And they start, I want to say February 2nd, 9th, February 3rd, excuse me. In the previous 3 sessions that I've been with CNRWA, we have utilized the services of Kathleen Laxalt to help during the legislative session, starting first in 2019, then in 2021, and then also in 2023 during the virtual session. And this session is going to be very busy for a number of reasons. One, because we're already seeing quite a few bill draft requests and hearing other discussions about potential VDRs and bills that are water-related and would have potentially a direct or indirect impact on CNRWA and its member counties. And also because we have a lot of new members of our Nevada legislature and have lost through term limits and other factors, I guess, some of the more senior members, or at least members who have lots of knowledge about water, and especially in rural Nevada, and Senator Kokachie, of course, comes to mind for all of us. So we've got a lot of new folks there, and so there's a lot of, education, if you will, about water issues, and there'll be lots of people and organizations talking to members about water issues, whether they're in alignment with what CNRWA would like to see or not. The fact is that it's going to be a very busy session in terms of all of that. And so I am asking the board to approve a contract with Kathleen Laxalt. And as I mentioned, she's been doing this for CNRWA since 2019. Kathleen's been working in the legislature for many years. She's highly respected and knows the process. She knows lots of the members and has a couple of other clients. So in terms of any kinds of conflicts, I think they're probably, at least at this point, from what I can tell, non-existent, although you just never know when things come up. But the other two clients I believe that she has are the Cattlemen's Association, and I'm not sure about propane dealers or others, but I just, we haven't run into any conflicts in the previous years, and I don't anticipate any this session either. So specifically, the work that she would be doing is tracking meetings, which basically is either in person or watching virtually now. Meetings, primarily the Senate and Assembly Natural Resource Committee meetings, potentially some Money Committee meetings. Those are probably the two key committees. Keeping notes, providing updates to CNRWA through me on a weekly basis, and helping set up appointments with various members. We basically need to see every member on both of those committees when bills are being considered, just to let them know where we are in those particular measures. Attending those meetings with me, and then occasionally at a meeting, if I'm not there, we're not able to be there, and we have a position that's really pretty, black and white, if you will. It's either yes or no, or neutral, without getting into a lot of detail or testimony. Nina and her folks will be able to do that on our behalf, so we're at least on record. So the other thing I wanted to bring up, and Nina and I have talked about this, is Nina will be doing almost all of her work virtually because of some health issues that she's been dealing with. But again, I think in this day and age, that's certainly doable, and you can watch meetings, you can provide public testimony virtually, and so forth. She also has Alex Tanchek working with her. You remember Alex?
Used to work with us.
Used to work with us for a few years doing our minutes. So Alex is going to be the, I think, person on the ground, and so if there's something that needs to be done there that I'm not available to do, then that's fine. And then the last thing I would say is, in addition to the skills and all of the things that Nina brings to this organization, I think it's really a cost-effective measure. I mean, when you look at what the proposed fee is, which is $1,500 per month for the next 4 months, or the 4 months during the session, it's much more, I think, cost-effective and quite frankly, very helpful to have her there instead of having me, watch hours of committee hearings and provide those kinds of spreadsheets and updates and things of that nature. So overall, that's, basically my recommendation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Jeff, I have one question about the contract itself. It's at the end of the contract where the contractor's initials are required concerning specific elements, and none of these are checked yes or no.
Right. So this is standard contract language that the state
Yeah, but
used, and so the way this would work is, since what we would do, of course, is we would have her check these boxes, and they would all be, with possible exception of one about, well, I think she would probably, in this case, she would check all these boxes, no.
Okay.
I'll just have to go through these. I think they would be all no in this case. And just for those of you who may not know what this is really sort of a checklist to make sure that any contract that we or anybody else that's using this contract template would do is this is to make sure that the contractor understands that they are not at all associated with the public entity for the purposes of things like PERS benefits, mostly PERS benefits and other things. It's really That's what it's for, because there was a time many years ago when contractors were being hired by agencies for whatever reason, and then 20 years later, it was determined that, no, they really were employees of the agency because they checked yes to all these boxes. So anyway, that's what that's all about.
Okay, great. Is there a motion on this item?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Plaskett. Is there a second?
I'll second Lori Carson.
Second by Commissioner Carson. Questions concerning that motion? Is there additional discussion on the contract? Is there any opposition to that motion? With no opposition, that motion passes. Thank you. Item 9 is a discussion and possible action to prioritize applications. Blah, blah, blah. You all have your agenda. I'm not going to read the whole thing into the record, and it's not necessary. Jeff, I will turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this agenda item was put on because we were wrapping up the water rights retirement, voluntary water rights retirement program that I'm going to discuss in just a minute here. And as we were retiring the water rights, they went through escrow, and the water right holders were being compensated for the retirement. And then we looked at the various invoices for the services with our contractors that are helping us on this, RCI, Leonard Law, and others. We estimated about $380,000 remaining in the CNRWA account. And that is $380,000 in state grant money. It's ARPA money, but it was devoted for this particular program to retire water rights, voluntary water rights retirement program. And so this was the amount of money remaining, and this was, of course, after two previous rounds of applications. The first one, February 9th, with the initial opening of the applications, which then this board approved on February 9th, and then a second round based upon some additional funding that was provided. And again, on August 12th, there was a second round of applications, and so this is what's remaining. And we try to get this done because there's a deadline, and the deadline is that all of the funding for this program has to be obligated by the end of this calendar year, or else it is lost and it reverts back to the federal treasury because it's ARPA funding. So we were under a time constraint to try to get or be able to use the $380,000 remaining in funds. So we opened up the third round of applications for Diamond Valley on November 14th, and we closed it on November 27th, and we did not receive any applications. So really, this is an item that we don't need to take any action on because we did not receive any applications during that time period. We did receive one apparently, or had interest in possibly one after that date, but because the program, or at least the application period, ended, and the state is going to get their funding returned, or the $380,000 returned, there's no action on this item. However, what I wanted to do real quickly, because I think it's important to kind of put this all into context, is just do a quick overview of where we are on the program, and because we're pretty much wrapping it up, and so I just thought I'd spend a couple minutes, Madam Chair, just providing a quick overview.
I just want to clarify. I just want to clarify for the record, there's not going to be any action, no formal action on this item.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you. So, let's see, I'm going to try to do this myself. What am I pointing at? I guess there. There we go. Okay, so this is a program that started back in October of 2022 when the interim finance committee appropriated $100 million of ARPA funding for infrastructure to the Nevada Department of Conservation Natural Resources. And then as part of that $100 million, the department carved out $25 million specifically for retiring water rights from willing sellers. And then in November of 2023, grants were awarded to 4 organizations. CNRWA received the largest share of the $25 million, received $8 million. The Humboldt River Basin Water Authority received $7 million. And then the the Walker River Conservation District, Walker River Conservancy, and Southern Nevada Water Authority each received the remainder of the money. I forget how much for each one, but CNRWA got the largest share of the $25 million for the program. And by the way, this is something that we started with this board back in June of 2023 to prepare for the possibility of the application and using the funds. In the case of CNRWA, the board and others felt, and this is basically based on data and statistics, but the bottom line is there are 4 overpumped groundwater basins in the central region: Diamond Valley, Smoky Valley, Stone Cabin, and Railroad Valley, at least the southern portion, that were really the targets because those are the overpumped basins in CNRWA in the Central Hydrographic Region. We focused on the larger agricultural rights with a total combined duty of greater than 640 acre feet, and also water rights that are in regular use. The idea is to not only retire water rights but reduce overall pumping. So after the first round of applications closed, we noticed, or we saw that the only applications that came from water right holders in the central region were from Diamond Valley. And this is really data based upon the first and second round, and here's where we were basically ending up, and that is a total of 10 applicants in Diamond Valley for a combined 37 permit/certificated rights in Diamond Valley. And we have been successful in retiring 11,298 acre feet of water in Diamond Valley at a total cost. And this is just the cost of the compensation for the water rights. There, of course, there are other costs associated with the program, but the total cost of $9,603,139. And basically, it's $850 an acre foot. And that $850 includes $800 for the actual price for the water per acre foot, and then $50 per acre foot for mitigation. And just to kind of put this into context for Diamond Valley, the perennial yield estimate is 30,000 acre feet. That's what's on the sort of the beige color. The committed amount of water in Diamond Valley is 135,725 acre feet, which is obviously the largest of the blocks there. And then what was retired is the 11,298 acre feet annually on the right-hand side. And so that's essentially a third of the perennial yield of the basin, which is a pretty significant impact. And just to be clear, not all of that 11,298 acre feet is pumped water, but the majority of it is. If it's not pumped, it can be pumped, and there's banked water as well associated with this. So I think it will hopefully have a significant impact to the good for Diamond Valley. This is the program budget. The original award amount to CNRWA was $8 million, and because of the strong interest in Diamond Valley, the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources saw fit to move some money around and provide an additional almost $2.3 million. And that enabled CNRWA to basically retire all of the water rights that were applied for by the applicants in Diamond Valley for the first and second round. So the amount that you see is the escrow amount. That's the amount that was held by the escrow company, BCM Services in Reno, to purchase, if you will, or compensate water right owners for their water rights, including the mitigation. Escrow fees, which were very reasonable, I think 0.2% of the sales price or purchase price plus a $700.50 fee per transaction. And then the various recording fees. So you can see we have a remainder in that account. The administrative costs, we had estimated $150,000. We had budgeted for that in the grant application. Again, these are all the federal or the state grant funds. To date, we've expended about $147,688. I'm estimating, just for balancing purposes, we might have a few outstanding invoices. I don't think it's going to exceed the $2,312. And so you can see where the balance remains. So it's about $386,897 that we will be returning to the state. I don't know what they're going to use that funding for. Hopefully it'll be for some sort of water-related program, maybe through the Division of Water Resources or others, but it will be used for some water-related purpose, I believe. So again, they have to have that funding obligated by the end of this calendar year. So that's why there's such a time constraint. And again, if we'd had more time, we might have been able to utilize that remainder to acquire some additional water rights. So as far as the overall budget is concerned, just a couple of other quick costs here. CNRWA committed in the application $35,000 in both in-kind and cash match for this program. So far, we've expended about $7,700 in contracts, primarily for the water valuation work that was done by Hansford Consulting, Economic Consulting. And then my hours so far have been about $12,500 in my time and effort. So the total match so far applied to the project is a little over $20,000. And then the overall administrative costs for the program administered by CNRWA, including consultants, was about will be about $176,000. That's less than 2% of the total grant. So not a lot of overhead there, and I think that I'll just say this, the team that we worked with on this project, Resource Concepts, Inc., Hansford Consulting, Conrad Communications, Leonard Law, BCN Services, they just did an amazing job, and they were really just very helpful, really took this project very seriously, and I really appreciate their work. Key takeaways, at least for Diamond Valley, clearly the CMA, the Critical Management Area designation, and the time frame in which to sort of get things resolved motivated sellers in Diamond Valley, and I would say that, one of the experiences I think that I'll always remember during this process is my conversations with each and every applicant for this program, and listening to their stories and listening to what questions they had and deliberations and those sorts of things. So it's really in addition to this just being a government program, it really does have a human side to all of this, which I think is really important. And then secondly, again, based on the overall interest that we had, given the short time frame, would say that this is probably something that most people supported and there's a lot of interest in. And of course, the question is going to be going forward, you know, what does that look like? And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the agenda. And then the last slide I want to talk about here is, and this is a slide that I ended my presentation to the Interim Joint Natural Resources Committee presentation on this program. You know, we've had questions in the past, and there still are those who wonder why we're spending public dollars to retire water rights. And I think all of those sort of bullet points are certainly relevant in terms of why we think it's important. And I'm not going to read them all, and you can see them on the screen, but, you know, just keep in mind that, again, there's always going to be folks who may not disagree with the program or the intent of the program, or, again, utilizing public dollars for this effort. But, you know, these are dollars that are being spent to protect natural resources of the state, and water being the most limited, of course, and critical in many ways. It's about protecting farms and communities and the environment. And so, you know, it's, as I mentioned, we'll be talking about a little bit later on the agenda as far as what the next steps might be for a more permanent water rights retirement program. So with that, I want to thank the board for all of your support in this program. This was groundbreaking in many ways, and I think it turned out to be a success. So thank you.
And specifically, thank you to Jake. You did a tremendous amount of heavy lifting on this, and it does not go unnoticed. Thank you. Any questions concerning item number 9, questions about Jeff's presentation or any discussion?
Just a comment, Madam Chair.
Yes, Marty.
As a second-generation landowner and every day closer to a third generation come along, I mean, this is been a huge help to us out there, and it's very appreciated also. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we've been proud to have our name connected with this great program.
Yeah, and just to follow up on your comment, Madam Chair, yeah, Jake and Commissioner Plaskett and Fred and Jim and everybody in Eureka County and Diamond Valley have just been very supportive. You know, it was a really great opportunity to understand what makes a program like this work or not work for a lot of reasons. And again, you know, through conversations with individuals as well as, you know, the folks here that represent Eureka County on the CNRWA board. But I think it was a good place to get things going. And so we hope that the lessons learned here can be transferred to other basins in the state.
Well, and if any money becomes available in the future, we have a reputation we can build on now. Yeah, because this was really successful. And Jeff, thank you for the idea. Item number 10 is a
I
discussion.
wanted to thank Jeff too, because we had weekly conversations about how it was going, where things were going. He was on top of everything, every step of the way. He did a great job of building this organization's reputation through that work that he did, keeping it together.
You bet.
'Cause it was a very complex program.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's sounding repetitive and maybe, you know, goes without saying, but I mean, in as much as we all did a good job, I mean, we had a lot of support from not only the state, Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, but of course, now that he's no longer in office, Senator Goicoechea was very instrumental in this, in terms of just also getting his advice and counsel on how to implement a program of this nature. And so, you know, a lot of folks had a great hand in making this work.
Okay. Thank you. Moving along to item number 10, which is a discussion and possible approval for CNRWA to enter into an agreement and separate legal contract with Schroeder Law. And Jeff will introduce and discuss this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Caitlin Scullin with Schroeder Law Office is on the Zoom with us. I'm going to just do a quick overview of the agenda item and a little bit of background on the issue, and then turn it over to Caitlin for a more in-depth sort of analysis of. Keeps turning off.
They're touchy.
Yeah, they are touchy. I'm trying to read mine. Here we go. I think I'll set it up this way. Caitlin can do a more in-depth analysis of the case, and probably the most important piece of this is, why this is important or should be important to water users in Nevada, CNRWA, and the West in general. But let me just start by saying that we first found out about this. I think Mr. Frey sent me some information. I know a commissioner in Humboldt County sent me some things. And then there was just a lot of information circulating around this topic, I want to say back in September. And this does involve the Baker Ranches in White Pine County. And before I get into the background here, so CNRWA, the agenda item is for CNRWA to participate in this amicus and have Schroeder Law Offices prepare the amicus on our behalf. I would note that since this item was considered or is being considered by the CNRWA board today, the Humboldt River Basin Water Authority, the Pershing County Water Conservation District, and Nevada Cattlemen's have signed on with Schroeder Law to be party to this amicus. And so for consideration today by the CNRWA board is to be sort of the fourth party to this amicus. And I think we'll, in a little bit, talk about why that would be helpful for the CNRWA board to do so. But anyway, this involves the Baker Ranches versus Haaland, which is, Haaland is, Secretary Haaland is the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Interior. And so Baker Ranches, owners of adjudicated water rights, brought suit against the United States, here the Secretary of Interior through the Park Service, to enjoin the United States from interfering with the decreed water rights. So the water rights to Baker and Lehman Creek were adjudicated in 1934, and that was prior to the enactment of the McCarran Amendment, which was enacted in 1952. And although the United States was apprised of the adjudication and its proceedings when Baker and Lehman Creek were adjudicated, they were not a party. And so, as I'm sure most of you, if not all of you know, in 1986, Congress established the Great Basin National Park on lands that the creeks run through, the Baker and Lehman Creeks flow through. And the Park Service acquired the decreed water rights already owned for the Visitor Center and Guard Station through their establishment of the park, through the reserved water rights. And those were and still do belong to the National Park Service, I think primarily for their Visitor Center and Guard Station. The Park Service, I guess since that time, and I don't know exactly when this started to occur, but they diverted water from those creeks to campgrounds. They felled logs across the creeks and, allowed obstructions and dams in the creeks, which basically consumed the flow of the creeks before they reached the park boundary, and so, and therefore the plaintiff's point of diversion. So when the owners of the decreed water rights, Baker Ranches, try to get in and clear some of those obstructions. In 2012, apparently the Park Service threatened the plaintiffs with law enforcement action if they entered park property to try to clear brush and obstructions and such, which is something that the plaintiffs believe that they had legal authority to do. So the plaintiffs filed a suit against the Department of Interior and the Park Service in state court. And the defendants, in this case, the Department of Interior and Park Service, removed the case to federal court under the federal officer removal statute and sought dismissal on sovereign immunity grounds. So the federal district court initially remanded to the state court based on prior exclusive jurisdiction doctrine, because the court that first exercises the jurisdiction over the waters of a stream maintains exclusive jurisdiction to administer and enforce the decree. And the federal district court concluded that the state court should consider and decide defendant's sovereign immunity case. While the case was on appeal, it simultaneously proceeded in state court. And the state court considered and rejected the Department of Interior's sovereign immunity defense because of the McCarran Amendment, basically waiving sovereign immunity because the Park Service already holds decreed water rights. And then the Ninth Circuit then went ahead and heard this case, and it reversed the federal district court's order that remanded the case to the state court on the basis that the federal district court should have decided the defendant's sovereign immunity defense. And the federal district court did so and concluded, contrary to the state court's analysis, that the case did not come within the McCarran Amendment's waiver because the original adjudication of pre-statutory vested rights did not consider any later created federal reserved rights and therefore was not comprehensive. So the federal district court dismissed the case, and as a result of this dismissal, no court apparently has jurisdiction to prevent the Park Service from violating the decree and diverting the water. So the plaintiffs now are appealing that decision to the Ninth Circuit. So, Caitlin, I hope I didn't mess that up too badly, but if I did, please correct anything I said or add to it. But I'm going to ask you to maybe add to that background or not, or correct any erroneous statements I made, and then maybe talk a little bit about why this is important for Nevada and specifically for the Central Nevada Regional Water Authority.
Yeah, of course. Good morning. Caitlin Skulon with Schroeder Law Offices. Jeff gave a really good background in summary on kind of what's going on with this case. It's procedurally a little bit complicated with the back and forth between the state and the federal courts. So right now this case is before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is the federal court that governs a good chunk of the Western United States. So one of the practical implications is that this is going to be a decision that is going to have an impact kind of throughout the West. So it's a pretty big deal in terms of how it can affect water rights in the Western United States. As Jeff said, the primary issue in this case is related to whether or not the United States has sovereign immunity related to these pre-1952 decrees, which a lot of our surface water decrees in Nevada predate that passing of the McCarran Amendment in 1952, which created a waiver of sovereign immunity for these adjudications of these water sources. So the question really in this case is whether or not this specific adjudication, this specific decree governed the United States, but the wider implication is whether or not similar decrees, these pre-1952 decrees, will apply to the United States if they weren't a party to the adjudication, which they weren't required to be because that McCarran Amendment wasn't passed until the 1950s. So some of the implications that could come out of that if the United States is not governed by these 1952 decrees is they could, for the first time, assert reserved federal rights for water, which happens when the federal government reserves a portion of land. That could be a park, a forest service, a national forest, tribal land, anything of that nature, they inherently reserve the amount of water that's needed for the purpose of that reservation. So we could see the United States now asserting reservations of new water in an area that has been long adjudicated and settled. The other thing that could potentially come out of this is if the United States is not governed by a decree and does not have to adhere to the decree or the decree court, there's the potential that the United States could interfere with these established decreed rights, like has happened in the Baker case, and have basically no recourse, no jurisdiction to go after the federal government because they're under this potential holding. They're not governed by that decree. They don't have to adhere to the priority or the different provisions of that decree. So that's kind of a general just picture of what we could see happen, and why it's really important for different entities in Nevada to file these amicus briefs, which is, again, it's not a party. We're basically filing what we call a friend of the court brief. So we're asking the court, in deciding this specific circumstances, to take into account this larger picture of what the impacts could be of that case, and just bringing in some additional considerations for the Ninth Circuit to really chew on while they're deciding how they're going to rule on this Baker case. So if there are any questions for me, I'm absolutely happy to answer them.
Are there any questions for Caitlin? Jeff, anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I just want to make a couple of comments related to the sort of the mechanics of this. We're aware of other entities that are in the process of filing or considering filing with other legal counsel. In this case, at least as I understand it, and well, I guess in general, it's good to have multiple entities on, fewer amicus briefs, just because I think it sends a pretty strong message. But there will be, at least that I'm aware of, potentially 2 additional amicus briefs filed by other attorneys representing other groups, which is fine. But if the CNRWA board today decides to go ahead and join this, then again, it would be along with the Humboldt River Basin Water Authority, Pershing County Water Conservation District, and Nevada Cattlemen's, which I think are, organizations that are very much all aligned, at least on this matter. And so the other issue is the cost, and that is always a consideration. And I don't know if Caitlin wants to speak to this or not, but my understanding in speaking with both Caitlin and Teresa is that overall the costs are pretty limited because of the maximum number of pages that can be filed in this brief to, I think, limited to 15. There's additional work that would be needed with regard to providing background, et cetera, on each of the entities. But generally speaking, I think we talked about sort of a high end for this effort to be about $18,000. So if my math is correct, that would be divided by 4. So, a little less than $5,000 max per party. So that's just, so everybody knows what's going on here as far as the finances are concerned.
Right. So first of all, to address the multiple parties on one motion, that is the preference when we're submitting these amicus briefs. It's good to have kind of a robust representation for amicus filings, but not necessarily a robust number of filings. And that is because if we really inundate the Ninth Circuit with a lot of amicus filings, the attention to detail that they give to each of those filings kind of lessens. So we want to make sure that we're kind of in the sweet spot and that there's enough to show that there's support for this case, but without being too much that we start to get lost within a large number of filings. Teresa might be able to speak a little bit more, but as Jeff said, there are multiple parties that have signed on to the amicus brief in our office, And so there will be a division of the expenses. I believe that 18,000 is accurate in terms of what it would cost to submit a 15-page amicus brief, and then some additional motions practice that we would need to do in order to be able to file an amicus brief, because certain parties have to request the court allow them to file that brief.
And Jeff, I think you had a not to exceed amount in mind.
Well, yeah, I don't know what to put on it, maybe $10,000. Let's see here, just because we're still, initially, I think the Humboldt River Basin Water Authority may have been one of the first to commit to signing on with Schroeder Law Offices for the amicus brief, so we weren't sure exactly early on how that was going to get split up or who would be participating. So I think for the purposes of the agenda item today, I think in the agreement we were putting a not to exceed amount of $10,000, and it might be in the draft
Jeff,
agreement.
This is Teresa Sticks. I think the 10,000 is what we had discussed, but as noted, there's other parties that have signed on with our office, so I don't think that we will get close to that. In addition, we will be speaking with Humboldt County as well about signing on, so there's a potential that there might be one more to split those fees across everyone. But the different parties have different not to exceed amounts. With generally they're around $6,000, so I think we'll be fine. So if you guys, if CNRWA wants to go something lesser, we can definitely do that as well.
Right now in the draft contract that I have in the backup, it's 10,000, but if you want to reduce that, we certainly can.
Well, what will our budget sustain?
$10,000, but
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to need that.
Jake, did you tried to say something earlier?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Jake Tibbetts. Just wanted to note that Eureka County is filing as well.
Oh.
But we, originally, some of the deadlines and stuff had been moved out, and we are using Karen Peterson with Allison McKenzie, who we already have retained for water matters. So it was just...
So you won't be using Schroeder?
No, because we'd already kind of, I guess, pulled the trigger on that as we were moving along. But I think, we do would support CNRWA in this effort as well, but just wanted you to be aware that we will be filing our own with Allison McKenzie.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, one other comment. Originally, the deadline for filing the amicus, I think, was originally a lot earlier and before this meeting, but there was an extension granted. Teresa, can you comment on the extension?
Yeah, I don't know if there was an additional extension, but right now, I know there was motions being filed for an additional extension of time, but right now the briefs are due, I think, like January 8th-ish. Caitlin, do you have that in front of you?
I think it's the 7th. I believe it's that Monday, or I think it's the 7th. I can check. I can double check. I was trying to see if Debbie was still on, see if she knew about those additionals, but.
Yeah, she had mentioned that there will be a motion to extend the time, so there's a possibility of another 30 days.
All right, is there any more discussion on this item, or is there a motion?
Madam Chair, this is Lori Carson. We've had discussions in our NRAC meeting. Dave Baker came to us. We were cautioned by our district attorney that where we haven't done it in the past, that supporting this so far as an individual, but I don't know where we've not done that in the past, the DA cautioned us against doing that as setting precedents. Now, is there a way that we can sign on to do this in regards with supporting CNRWA? That makes sense.
Yeah,
Rather
but
than
I
us
don't know.
filing our own amicus brief.
Can you go on the record and say that?
This is Jake Tibbetts. I think that, Trace just mentioned, or Caitlin did, about potential Humboldt County also signing on. It seems like White Pine County could be another person to join on with Schroeder Law Office on this.
Okay, I will most definitely. As a matter of fact, I was texting back and forth with Cody. Cody is the chairman of our Natural Resource Advisory Board, and we've had discussions on this. So I'm thinking that him and I can go ahead and talk to our DA and let her know. And if possible, if she needs more clarification, because she is new to this position, that maybe either Jeff or you or maybe contacting the attorney to give maybe a little bit more direction in case she does have questions. I know we're under a time constraint though, and this is my last year as a county commissioner. I am still going to continue and be on the CNRWA, but so I'd like to kind of foster this along just a little bit, at least having discussions with the DA.
Caitlin and Teresa, would it be okay if Commissioner Carson gave the White Pine County DA your contact information in case there's any questions or maybe follow up on this matter?
Yes, that's
Okay.
fine.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
This is Commissioner Hudson. Shall I take this to the commissioners and see if they want to be a part of this?
Yes, I think you do.
Okay, I will put that on an agenda.
Yeah, because this is pretty far-reaching. It could end up affecting every county.
Chair,
Yes.
Commissioner Strickland, Jeff, can you send us out just a basic letter of support so that I can get it in front of the Board of County Commissioners and see how far they're willing to go if we give them some more backup information?
What's our deadline?
For each of
Is
the
our
counties?
the deadline's January 22nd? Is that what I heard? Oh, 8th?
So I just checked. It's Monday, January 6th.
Oh, the
is
6th.
deadline.
Yeah, that doesn't leave much time, Deb.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah,
We've only
so-
got the meeting on the
yeah.
17th and the 3rd, so I won't be able to help at this time. Thank you.
Not unless you hold a special meeting or you get it in front of the water board.
Or there's another extension
The
granted.
Water Board's meeting's coming up on Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah, and
I'll
as
make
Jeff
Dan
said,
aware.
as Jeff said, unless another extension is granted.
Well, keep us in the loop, because we need all the counties we can get, apparently. I was not aware. Sorry.
Yes. That's all right. You only know what you know, right? Is there a motion on this item?
Mr. Wagenseller, I have a question.
Chris, can you get on, is there a microphone by you? Oh,
Is
there.
this on?
Hello?
Hit the, oh, it's on. Okay.
Okay. The total cost is $18,000, excuse me. And there's multiple parties and we're putting up part of it. What happens if there is an agreement reached with other parties? How's the amicus brief stand? Do we pony up the rest or?
No,
How
we're
would
going to
that work?
set a not-to-exceed amount.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if there's
The
not-
recommendation is for CNRWA not to exceed $10,000, but the letter to CNRWA that's in your backup very clearly says that Schroeder Law Offices will work with the client group to split the legal fees equally across all clients in the group.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
But whatever motion comes on if there is a motion to approve this item, it should include setting a not-to-exceed fee of amount of $10,000.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Hudson, and I will make the motion.
Just as I stated it?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Motion to approve by Commissioner Hudson. Is there a second?
I will second that. Lori Carson?
Second by Commissioner Carson. Thank you. And Lori, I'm thrilled to know you're going to still be part of this organization. Are there any questions concerning the motion? It is to approve with a not-to-exceed amount of $10,000. Any additional discussion concerning this agenda item? Is there any opposition to the motion? With no opposition, that motion passes. Thank you, ladies. Thank you. And I assume you'll be working with Jeff on this?
Correct.
Yes, okay, thank you. All right, item number 11. Our friend Niall Pennington is here to make a presentation on the implementation of CNRWA's groundwater monitoring program for this fiscal year.
Good morning. I turned it off. Good morning. It's good to be here again. First off, my annual report is posted on the Central Nevada website. Please read it. There's a lot of good information in there. Second of all, the water level data report is posted there as well, and it's current with the 2024 water level measurements that were procured. Look through it, familiarize yourself with it. Just as an overview, the observed water levels in the majority of the valleys are flat with minor fluctuations. That's a good thing because there's no human interference out there. All the wells were found intact, operational, and in very, very good condition. All static observations are very accurate and they're consistent. Now let me give you a little bit of history here. How this well network was set up. We're going to back up a few years, back to 2009. I attended a meeting at the USGS with Steve Bradhurst and Rick Felling, where Steve Bradhurst laid out his vision for this particular well network that has evolved to what we have now. That vision required the inventory of over 200 wells in these 12 valleys, over 200. Documented, assessed, photographed, characteristics gathered, soundings taken, and that data was brought back and internalized by a large number of people. It took man-hours and man-hours to assimilate all that data. And then out of that 200 wells, Dan Dragon selected 51 in the 12 valleys. They were selected because of accessibility. Number one, ease of measurement, right of egress. It's a tremendous network. This point in time, the network has evolved.
Thank you.
Some wells went dry and were replaced with ones adjacent. Some wells were destroyed and replaced by ones adjacent or nearby. BLM has upgraded many of the solar wells, on-demand pumping types for livestock and wildlife, and in some instances, new detention ponds constructed. Livestock operators, such as Sea Punch Corporation, Saving America's Mustangs, have graciously installed new measuring ports that allow easy access and increase accuracy, all at their own time and expense. They were simply asked to do the work, and they graciously did. Silver Peak WO2 has had a major overhaul. All pumping equipment and lift pipe removed, and all new pump and lift pipe installed. It's now very easy to measure that well, where before it was extremely problematic. Goldfield Mine Well, now monitored for statics and water chemistry by a third party, Mountain Valley Professionals. John Barber, Reno. And they forward the static water levels to me for inclusion into my water level data report, which you can access online. Stone Corral Stockwell in Railroad Valley has had all the pumping equipment and pipe removed. It may be on the way to a new solar setup. That's in the future. I don't know that now. Stone Corral now is designated as a USGS active base station for the current ongoing Railroad Valley study.
Is
being
Stone
conducted.
Corral the same as Stone Cabin? Is that in the same area? Stone Corral and Stone Cabin, are those in the same area?
Stone Corral is midpoint if you're taking the road from the Alien.
Oh, that's okay, I can ask you
Yeah,
offline.
the Alien Highway.
Yeah.
It goes over to Nyala. It's north of there. And there is a Stone Corral there. That's why it's named Stone Corral.
Okay, yes, Stone Cabin
Yeah, the
goes
Stone
off the
Corral
other
is
way.
about three-quarters of a mile away. And whoever built it, they were monsters, I'm telling you. Okay. Stone Corral is now an active base station for the Railroad Valley study. Jake's Valley Stockwell, Gardner Ranch, White River, was observed pumping via a 5,000 kW generator. First time a pumping observation has ever been made at that well. It really took me off balance when I showed up there. There was quite a herd of cattle there too. First time ever. Midway Stockwell, way southern Jake's Valley. It's on the mid break between Jake's and White River Valley. It's called Midway Stockwell. This has been upgraded by BLM to a new solar on-demand pumping, new log fence, the likes of which you would only see in the Tahoe Basin. Trust me, it's spiffy. That's there to protect the wellhead, and a new detention pond was constructed for livestock, deer, elk, and not to mention the sage grouse, and it was full. In conclusion, it's my estimation that this CNRWA observation well network is one of the finest observation well nets in the state of Nevada, simply due to the immense area that the net covers, but also accessibility and the consistent reliability of observation for all involved. And all involved includes Nevada Division of Water Resources, USGS, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, CNRWA, and we're all fortunate for the valuable hydrologic data that this network provides. It's appreciated by a good number of people.
We are
Thank you.
going to give you 40 minutes to quit saying wonderful things about us. And you left somebody out, you. You are a very important part of this program, Niall.
Well, thank
And
you.
we appreciate your efforts.
Thank you.
Jake?
Thanks, Madam Chair. So Niall just ditto that, a lot of great work, but I want to note how Niall's lucky hand saved this entity some money. If you look in his billing, he rolled 3 dice at Tonopah and got a free room, so.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention that.
I did that twice.
So I'm going to take him to the craps table one of these days.
Oh, yeah, Jeff, go ahead.
Madam Chair, thanks. Yeah, I want to echo everyone's appreciation of Niall. We do get together every once in a while to kind of talk about things and contract renewals and status updates and things of that nature. And so I also appreciate Niall's work and commitment to CNRWA, and he's right. I mean, the work that he does on our behalf is highly regarded and recognized. I do want to bring up one thing, and this is, I'll just make a couple comments about this, and then obviously something that we may want to agendize for a future meeting. But one of the things that, well, I learned a lot of things in my most recent conversation, or second to most recent conversation with Niall about the origins of the program, because I was unaware of how all this got started and how the network was put into place, and determination was made with regard to what wells to monitor, how they're monitored, and so forth and so on. And the reason we had this conversation is because I have had a couple of meetings with some folks who are interested in sort of piggybacking on to our monitoring network by basically not so much necessarily expanding the network, but maybe looking at adding some technology features to some of the wells, and which initially got me very interested and excited about the possibility of bringing some technology to our program until I had this conversation with Niall about, well, great idea, but here are some of the things you need to consider. And so, including, for example, the fact that we don't own any of those wells. And the reason that, one of the reasons I think that our program has been so successful in the past is because of Niall's work and an effort to establish the relationships with the people who do own those wells. And that's really important because not everybody can do that. And so I just want to bring it up again because, one, I'm going to continue conversations with the folks that I've been talking to about this idea, this concept, and Niall and I have agreed to stay in touch on that. And secondly, again, just for everybody to recognize that, you know, this isn't just Niall going out once a year out into the various basins and taking well measurements. It's about you know, the creation of this program, the ability to access those wells mostly all the time, with some exceptions. I know Ms. Chris Wagenseller has helped Niall with access to I think the Goldfield well down there. And so, but, you know, it's really important to consider the program, its origins and potentially where we might expand it or not. So anyway.
And my recollection of the reason that we started this program was that communities out there, when somebody comes knocking on their door and says, we want to take water out of this valley or that valley, that those communities have information, non-biased
You're exactly
information.
right.
If you do not have it, then the state engineer accepts the best available information, which is the person who wants the water, and that's biased. And so it's a wonderful program. It's one of the main reasons why I have continued to find so much value in this organization, and it's important to take back to your communities that it's there. We are here for those communities. We hire good people like Niles to do the work. And it's just another one of those things, just like the Water Right Retirement Program. We break ground here. We're making things work in the state. Thank you.
Niall, I have two questions about your report. The first question, it's on page 3, and it's specifically about Centerra Gold. And they're going to use a well to dewater. And you were informed that a new pump and electrical were installed, making measurements problematic and somewhat inconsistent with prior documentation. Why would upgrading the pump and electrical system provide problematic measurements?
Here's the issue. Prior to the new pump, water level measurements were easy enough to procure. There were no downhole obstructions. After the new pump was installed, I can only assume that the electrical was not tethered to the sucker pipe, and it's dangling so that access through the main measuring port creates an obstruction which doesn't allow the water level tape to reach static. That's the problematic, because there's a 5-foot difference between what I found the last time that I measured there, which was in 2023, and that water level was at 99.6 feet. The 2024 observation was 5 feet higher, which means that they're not reaching the static water level. We've noted over the course of the years since '09 that well that has been measured has had nothing but a downward trend. It's on the order of like 50 feet. Why would it suddenly recover 5?
Yeah.
And when I presented that finding to Mr. Barber, well, that's what it was. I accepted the measurement simply because we can't go on the property anymore. They do. They're the environmental people that go there and measure the static water levels, and they also do water chemistry.
So there's no independent oversight of that by this organization?
We'll see what the future brings.
Well, but in the meantime, it's important that, I guess, that our friends in Esmeralda County have that information. Yeah, Commissioner Keys.
All right, there we go. I could only assume a couple of things there. I know
Can
there's-
everybody on the phone hear Commissioner Keys?
I'll try this one.
Yeah, try that one.
And Chris may be able to help me on some of this information too, but the county has upgraded and changed some of its domestic water supply wells for the town of Goldfield, and some of the wells may be affected by some of the pumping tests that we've done, and so on like that. The gold mine there has been pumping water for their activity, so that may lead to some changes, which Niall was talking about. They may be doing some pumping for their own use, and they have some water rights there in town that I believe they are using their own water instead of getting it from the county. So there's going to be some fluctuations there while they gear up to start mining there. So there is quite a bit of activity with the county using different new wells that we put in the last few years, and with this Centerra Gold getting geared up to mine, they have been using their own water source for their activities there. So there's been some dynamic changes there in the last 5 years.
I'm curious if if it was impeding our efforts to do measurements because there was an obstruction there. How are you able to get results from Centerra if they're doing
Well,
their own?
They cooperate with us and supply that data to us on an annual
Right,
basis.
but my question is, the obstruction is going to be there for them as well as
Yeah.
for Nile.
And I don't know what situation they have there to monitor. They may have piezoelectric devices or sounding tubes or so on, but I don't know
Okay.
the particulars there.
Well, at least you're
Yeah.
aware of it now.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
and then one other question, Niall, and it is under general observations, and it's the Paris well in White Pine County. The White Pine County Road Department has posted the road into Paris well is closed with a sign, violators will be prosecuted. Is this a well that we need to have access to? And can Commissioner Carson run interference for us on that?
I was thinking about exactly trying to find out what's going on there.
Yeah.
This is the first I've heard of it. I was not aware.
Okay.
Because that's really unusual for them to do something like that, and it has not come up in any of our commission discussion and information.
Okay, thank you,
When
Lori.
the road department is given a presentation. So.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions?
I do.
Yeah. Commissioner Frey.
Norman Frey. Niles, on the well that you're having a problem with access to getting accurate measurements, or you believe you're not getting accurate measurements, is there a resolution to that problem? If we don't have access, do we need to get another well close by? Or
Here's the most up-to-date assessment that I have, Norm. Yes, indeed, the road was closed. There's a big sign.
Are we talking about Centerra?
We're talking about
or are
Paris
we talking
Stockwell.
about Paris? Oh,
Stockwell, southern Newark Valley, extreme southern Newark Valley. The reason that that road got closed is about a mile east of Paris Stockwell, a Texas Wildcat outfit came in with an oil and gas rig and set that up, and they ran heavy equipment up and down that road and pounded it, literally pounded it into dust. You take a four-wheel drive truck in there, you're going to stay there. I went around that. That's 10 miles, by
is
the
that
way.
a county road?
It's a county road. It's a White Pine County road. I
Yeah.
went around that with my Jeep through the sagebrush to get to Paris Stockwell, and upon arrival, I found that the Wildcat rig was pumping Paris Stockwell for their own water needs. They had a pipe running down to the O&G. So here, the bottom line here is this. I have access to the USGS INWIS file. Most of you don't, but I do. I went in there and I looked just within the last couple of weeks. And someone from the USGS had visited that well in late October or early November and procured a water level measurement of 311.2 feet. That's right where it should be. So I took that USGS measurement, added it to my water level measurement file, and credited that to the USGS. So we're up to date.
Okay, great.
That road is, this is Cody Aldridge, that road has been, the county has accepted a bid for that road to be rebuilt, so he should not have problems accessing that next year.
Yeah, well, I certainly hope
Yeah.
that you're going to back bill the exploration company.
So this is, and Cody, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't this Western Oil and Gold?
Western Oil and Gas or whatever, Western, yeah.
Gas,
It's on the in Newark Valley.
Yeah, and we have had considerable issues. As a matter of fact, they have violated a lot of federal laws, and I think there may even be prison term with the individuals. This has been going on for a while.
Well, we popped the lid right off of that can of worms, didn't we?
But anyhow, yes, and we did end up getting a cash bond, and so we're going to be using that cash bond to pay for somebody to come in and rebuild the road.
All right. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Cody. Any other questions for Niall? Thank you, Niall. It is a great pleasure working with you. Thank you.
I have a question. I wasn't real quick for Niall. On
Yes.
the Centerra Gold well, how often, if you had your choice, how often would it be monitored? And the one with the obstruction.
Currently, it's been monitored one time per year. I don't know of any other users. There may be personnel in the environmental section with Centerra that monitor that well, as they do others. But that particular well has been, we've collected record on that since 2009. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, I think there's other historical measurements that may predate that 2009 date.
If you had the permission, oh, by the way, Fred Perez, Commissioner-elect Esmeralda County.
You know, I was just looking at my roster thinking, who is that?
I was here last meeting and I saw it in the minutes.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks for coming back.
So, one of my questions might be, what well is it? And then the other, if you could get access to it and it still had that obstruction, is there a way to get through it? You're dropping a tape from what it sounds like. Is there maybe some way to put like a fish tape down it to get through that? Or I'm kind of curious about these things.
Oddly enough, that particular well has two ports. It has a 2-inch steel port. That's the port that we always go down to get a static water level measurement. And then on top of the wellhead, it has I think it's a 1-inch diameter PVC that I know nothing about. I've never dropped a tape down there because the 2-inch steel port that's the accepted measuring point. So there's two ways to get into that well. And I don't know what the PVC pipe is all about, whether that was some way to procure a water chemistry sample or a logger type port. I don't know who put it there. That's, I don't.
Okay, one last question. It seems like maybe you have restricted access at this point?
At this point in time, we do.
Okay, so that's maybe
We
something.
are restricted.
Okay, I will.
You don't have restricted access, you have no access.
We have no access.
Okay, and then maybe we can have a talk offline later on and then talk about that. There is a way. I kept it in mind. Chris has a way.
That would be great.
Or Chris is working on a way. There you go, Chris.
Any other questions did you have a comment, Chris?
Oh, I have a comment about access if you want to know. But so the original measurement on Jim Field well that Niall had a question about, John Barber told me that he would go out. That was done by a different contractor, and John Barber told me that later he would go out and remeasure that. Did you get a remeasurement? Was that
This
the
is
same?
Gem Field?
Yeah, the Jim Field well.
No, I only got the one measurement that his daughter made.
Okay.
And that was at 95 feet. And our 2023 measurement was 99.6.
Oh.
There's a difference there.
Okay. Thank you, Niall. Any follow-up questions? Thank you. Thanks, Niall. Item 12. Norm, I'm going to turn this over to you. This is a report from the Legislative Committee on activities related to the next session.
My report is that the legislature is extremely active. There's a lot of bills being proposed. Some of them of questionable value to our member counties. And at our last legislative meeting, we spent so much time working on the lawyer issues that we barely had time to read the bill draft numbers. But Jeff has a very good handle on it. And we are proposing to meet again on January 14th, which will be before the session. So, Jeff, do you have anything to add for?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Norm. So, in addition to the meeting that we had this past Monday, I think the CNRWA Legislative Committee has met at least once or maybe 2 additional times since the last CNRWA board meeting. And before I go any further, again, I want to thank the committee for their time. We meet before session about once a month, it seems like, and then maybe during session we meet a little bit more frequently and maybe even on a moment's notice if needed. But I want to be clear that in those committee meetings, we do not take any actions, or the committee doesn't take any actions. It's really just discussion of bills and matters of or measures, and really gives me at least a broader perspective on some of this stuff. But ultimately, a decision, for example, to either oppose or support a bill, for example, would have to be the full board. But again, it's really helpful to have the input from the legislative committee, and also legislative committee also includes others who are not members of the CNRWA Board of Directors. For example, Chris Mahana, who represents Churchill County, and Doug Busselman of the Farm Bureau, for example. So I don't know, Madam Chair, if there's others that are interested, if they should see you about participating in that. But
Yeah, Jeff, I was going to add when you were finished that we would welcome the participation of any CNRWA member in the legislative committee meetings. I like big tents, and somebody may very well have an idea that we had, or a concern we hadn't thought of.
I would welcome more participation, more members. We do have good discussions. There's always things to learn. One thing to take heed of in bill draft requests this early is they will definitely be changed. So some of them need our closer monitoring than others, but I'd sure welcome more people on the committee.
Thank you both. So I want to just cover a few of the highlights, I guess, or measures that we're tracking very closely. And in your packet is a summary of the recommendations, water bills, draft requests that were approved by the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Natural Resources, and that was done during their work session on August 23rd. And I'll just go through these very quickly. The first one is BDR 48379. This is a bill that was proposed by the Great Basin Water Network to encourage and perhaps incentivize in some way water conservation, which, you know, is certainly I think a good goal. I can tell you that when it was heard by the committee, there was a lot of discussion about this, and the concerns from some committee members about this bill draft request was that it's a little too late to start talking about this because a bill like this is really complex, very difficult, and again, while the intentions may be good, there's certainly potential for some downside, and probably the most important downside could be speculation, for example, and maybe some other unforeseen impacts. So this may be one of the more complex and maybe controversial bills this session. I know that within our stakeholder working group, which consists of a lot of folks outside of this organization, Jake is part of that working group, and the Division of Water Resources and Great Basin Water Network, Southern Nevada Water Authority, Truckee Meadows Water Authority, and others. There's been a lot of discussion about how this may or may not work.
One of the main problems that I see with it is conservation is non-use. How can non-use be a beneficial use?
Well,
that's problematic. And can it be used? We need to monitor. Can it be used to hold a water right for a long period of time without use when it would normally be forfeited or otherwise taken off the inventory?
Those are certainly some of the issues that have been discussed and are of concern to a number of folks. So thank you. Yeah. The next BDR was one that was recommended by this board and the Humboldt River Basin Water Authority. It's really the same. We'll see, at least probably in the first version of this bill, the same language that was in Senate Bill 112 from last session and sponsored by Senator Goycochea. And this deals with the groundwater basin assessments in certain designated basins. The reason that we are all interested in this leading up to last session in 2023 was because the budget for the biennium before that, two bienniums before that, and then the proposed budget for this current biennium included a transfer of revenues from the basin account to the general fund, well, the overall operating account for the Division of Water Resources. And basically what it did is, by moving those basin account assessments, a portion of those revenues into that account, it basically reduced the general fund appropriations to the Division of Water Resources. So it was used to supplant general fund appropriations. And once we started to look into that, we realized that, well, we don't want to see that happen because we know what the implications of that would be. One, those basin account revenues are to be used in those basins for some very specific activities, and the Division of Water Resources even testified to that effect, that that would be reduced. Field presence would be reduced. The projects in the basins would be reduced because those funds would be going to the division to support additional the positions that were previously funded through the general fund appropriations. And so the fact that there's no cap on the assessment, and also the fact that there seems to be very little understanding, or it was until that point, very little understanding of how the account was used for, the uses, the amount remaining, just a lot of issues in terms of transparency, and even the state legislature, because this was not part of their normal budget request from the Division of Water Resources. And so the long and short of it is, we had a lot of support for the bill, didn't make it out. However, this session, I have been working with the Division of Water Resources. They approached me about working on some language to maybe try to accomplish some major goals here, which is, capping the assessment, because right now it's uncapped. And this is not an indictment of the, state engineer of the Division of Water Resources, but right now, yeah, the assessments may be okay, but there's no there's no guarantee that in the future, without a cap on those assessments, someone else coming in afterwards could raise those caps. So that was an issue. Two, the use of the funds. And again, there was a lot of work that had to be done last session to reverse that transfer of the basin assessments into the general fund account for the Division of Water Resources. And as long as there's no limitation on the use of those funds or restrictions on the use of those funds, that's likely to happen anytime there's a budget shortfall. And so we want to make sure that those funds can only be used for very specific purposes related to work in the basins. And again, working with the Division of Water Resources, we're hoping to get that cleaned up. And then the transparency piece, again, I don't know of anybody in this room that understands how the basin assessment accounts work. And quite frankly, up until 3 weeks ago, when I saw a memo from the Department of Taxation, which I hadn't seen until that time, and I don't even know if the division had seen until that time, explains sort of how the assessments are supposed to be sort of administered, which, you know, explains some of the things, but not enough. And so I think, you know, the fact that boards of county commissioners are the ones who have to impose that assessment.
Well, here's the thing. That was always a pet peeve of mine when I was on the Board of Commissioners. We have to approve those assessments, but it doesn't matter if we don't approve the assessment, it's going to be made anyway.
Well,
And then you come to find out that they don't even spend the money on the intended purpose.
well, all of that. And not to mention the fact that when I looked at that Department of Taxation memo, which is in your backup, by the way, it looked like that's a pretty significant effort, burden on behalf of your county assessor.
Yeah.
To put all that together. And so, anyway, the long and short of it is that the division, I think, understands all of that and is working with us, I think, to try to come up with something. I mean, the last thing we want to do is...
They heard the whistleblower.
The last thing we want to do is tie the division's hands in their ability to, you know, implement, to collect the assessment or levy that assessment or use it in ways that will be beneficial to the basin. But on the other hand, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to explain how all that works and make sure there's some guardrails on there. So I think hopefully we'll reach some consensus there. The other bill draft request that was approved by the interim committee, again recommended by CNRWA, again is our one of our favorite topics, local groundwater boards or county groundwater boards. As you, I'm sure, remember, this was something that was proposed in 2021, and again in 2023 we came very close to getting that legislation, SB 180, again sponsored by Senator Gokachia, passed in the 2023 session, and but for an amendment in the Assembly that wasn't concurred to by the Senate, and then the bill got hijacked for another purpose, and then on the last day of the session, there was a conference committee finally at 7 o'clock at night to agree to the amendment, and at that point, we just ran out of time. It was too late. We'll see, and this was based on this board's direction at the last meeting. We'll see a bill that will be exactly what the reprinted or the amended version of SB 180 was last session that was approved by both committees, Senate and Assembly Natural Resources Committee. I can tell you that the Division of Water Resources, even though they're, you know, officially going to be neutral, will likely, maybe they'll attach a fiscal note, I don't know. But they don't like this concept. I've had a number of discussions with the division state engineer specifically about this and try to explain that, you know, this isn't personal, this isn't about what's going on, because as I've mentioned to others, State Engineer Sullivan and Division of Water Resources have really, I think, made a great effort to get out and meet with communities, and they're holding listening sessions. I know there's going to be one here in Churchill County, I think, on the 17th. So they're trying to do that. They're trying to get out in the communities, but I think that this is an idea, or not an idea, but a concept worth pursuing, because as we're seeing with some other areas, for example, the Humboldt Basin, where the division has put together a stakeholder working group, that's all fine and well, but you know, that stakeholder working group includes a lot of folks that really don't have much of a direct interest in the Humboldt Basin. And they're certainly of benefit to the overall group, but the county groundwater boards would be, water right holders in those specific basins, and the idea is that they would take some ownership and some, some effort to try to be proactive about preventing their groundwater basins, the ones that are designated anyway, from becoming overpumped, and not have to get into the CMA designation or status or something like that. And that needs to be something that's, I believe, part of the water statutes. And I also think part of that should be a line of communications between those local groundwater boards and the Division of Water Resources. So it's clear that there is that communication and ability to work together. And again, this administration and State Engineer Sullivan has really demonstrated an effort to do that, but this needs to be more than just a community workshop for one evening. This needs to be a sustainable effort over time, and so we'll just see. I'll try to, again, work with the division to see if there's anything that we can come to agreement to, but I think it's still worth pursuing, and maybe we'll get there.
Madam Chair, this is Lori Carson.
Yes, Commissioner Carson.
I have a comment.
Mhm.
Do you, Jeff or Norm, do you think it would be appropriate that there could be something in there that, in regards to notifying basin counties when they come out to do their assessment?
So Commissioner Carson, that is something that was in the original assessment, water right assessment bill, or groundwater basin assessment bill in SB 112 from last session, which will continue. And at that time, I remember in the hearing that the division expressed concern about the additional workload for them to come out to every county every year. And I think we ended up with language, something to the effect of that they will come out upon the request of a Board of County Commissioners no more than once a year. So yes, that is part of, I think, what we want to accomplish, at least with that bill.
Well, and I was thinking too that, if we do get the ability to have a county water board, that it would, that would be the instrument to be able to, go ahead and have correspondence in some way, the state engineer's office, or whoever comes out to do the assessment.
Well, that's certainly one piece of it. But again, that is the idea, is to have, a more formal linkage between the county groundwater board and the Division of Water Resources or state engineer for that purpose, which would include assessments and maybe other aspects related to those designated basins in your county. So appreciate the comment.
Thank you. And I vaguely remember it being there, but I wasn't 100% and sure where it went. Okay. So thank you for that.
Sure. Another recommended BDR was to continue support to the Desert Research Institute for cloud seeding, something that DRI and the Humboldt River Basin Water Authority have worked on over the last several years, and we're finding beneficial. Part of the work that DRI did 2 years ago in the cloud seeding program was, well, actually last year as well, last 2 years, to actually use some of the funding, the match funding that was provided by the HRBWA member counties and mines and conservation districts and others to actually start doing some analysis of the efficacy of cloud seeding. In other words, does it work? And I'm no scientist, but the DR folks that run this program are telling me that they think that the cloud seeding efforts in the Santa Rosas and the Rubies have resulted in a 10% increase in snow water equivalent. Whether all or some of that, or how much of that actually reaches the river, is still, an open question. But if you can increase your snow water equivalent by 10%, that's pretty significant for you know, the amount of money it takes to do cloud seeding, which, by the way, is all pretty much automated and push-button control from the STED, you know, facility there where the conditions are right, and I get updates every 5 minutes on which cloud seeding units are on or which ones are off, and it's really an interesting program. BDR 48383 is what's being called the Omnibus Bill, and this is something that the stakeholder working group that I'd refer to has been working on now for close to a year, maybe. And it includes a number of different items, and the concept here is it's going to be a bill that is sort of has consensus, at least amongst this stakeholder working group, and slowly as this stuff expands with others, non-controversial, without a fiscal impact, so or minimal fiscal impact, and pretty much something that as a unified group we could all support. Now, when that recommendation was made, I signed my name on the letter transmitting this concept, but I did not associate my name with either the CNRWA or HRBWA, nor did any of the signatories to the letter do so, because of course we hadn't had the opportunity to fully brief or get support from our respective boards. But it seems like it's you know, it's gaining some steam now. I think the centerpiece of this BDR is a water rights retirement program. It's a little different than what we had in Senate Bill 176 from last session, but it's, I think, a refinement, and basically I would consider an improvement. Not that 176 was bad, but this is more refined. One of the areas that I'm still concerned about and want to work on is the connection between this and the proposed potential funding source, which was the Conserve Nevada Bond Program, which is at least a start, as opposed to requesting an appropriation from the legislature, because that would sink the bill, maybe, which is what seemed to be the case last session. It went to Senate Finance and never got a hearing, even after getting almost unanimous support in the Senate Natural Resources Committee. So trying to work through that, because one of the requirements of the Conserve Nevada Bond Program, if it were able to be used for water rights retirement, is that it requires a 20% match, or at least based on what this omnibus bill would suggest. And so that's not going to work, I don't think, for at least the central region and probably most of rural Nevada anyway. Given, you know, let's take, for example, the CNRWA program, which was a $10 million grant program. So I just don't see too many opportunities to come up with that kind of funding at a 20% match, which would mean $2 million for a $10 million program in one basin. But we'll work on that. And then again, there's some other provisions in this omnibus bill that are not directly related to or indirectly related to the work that we do. The other bill is basically reintroduction of Senate Bill 176 from last session. Again, this is the water rights retirement bill that Senator Goycochea carried for us, was not enacted. And then there's a couple of other bills. Division of Water Resources has a bill relating to dams and how that's all administered, and so that doesn't, I don't really think, affect anybody, any member county, at least with regard to the CNRWA. There's some implications, obviously, for the Humboldt River Basin Water Authority in Pershing County. There was a bill draft request that was 48262 proposed by the Division of Water Resources. It was very conceptual, dealing with water rights, and I guess I'll just go one step further and say looking at how forfeitures occur or don't occur, and some of the issues related to that. We understand that bill is most likely not going forward at this time. And then a couple of other ancillary items. One is the DWR budget. I did send a letter of support to the governor's budget office director, Jim Wells, to support on behalf of CNWR the division's request to continue funding for their water initiative, which is the work to basically update water basin studies. I think potentially some more modernization or digitization of some of their records and things of that nature. And because the current program is based on ARPA funding, which expires, I think, 2026, it's really important to keep the progress in that program going, or else we're going to be back to where we were, which is they complete a couple of basin studies, and then we've got 250 other basins that we still need to do work on, so, or update. And then the last item that I had on this was we're, hearing and seeing other things sort of surface for the 2025 session, or at least potentially surface, and one of them has to do with how the Division of Water Resources and state engineer do their jobs, and sort of the structure of the Division of Water Resources. One of the concerns that's been sort of expressed and circulating around out there has to do with the fact that, one, the Division of Water Resources is not subject to NRS 233B, which is the Administrative Procedures Act, and two, the governance of the Division of Water Resources. They do not have a governing board, and even though the state engineer's decisions are subject to judicial review, when it comes time to take action on adopting regulations and et cetera, it's not like you're going to a state board for finance or Board of County Commissioners or any one of a number of other state boards, like the State Environmental Commission, for example, within the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. And so there may be, we haven't seen anything yet, there may be something that is floated or even a BDR related to some of that stuff. So we'll just stay tuned on that. But again, that's pretty much my report. If anybody has any questions on any of the specific BDRs or bills, please let me know. Jake is on the legislative committee. I don't know if Doug is here, Chris Mahana, Commissioner
Deborah
Strickland. Yeah, you, Chair, and of course, Vice Chair. And I think Commissioner Steninger is also on the call as well. So that's my report.
Who will be the chairman of Natural Resources? I've heard it's somebody it's their first session.
Zero experience.
Well, so the chair of the Assembly Natural Resources is Natha Anderson. She was, I want to say she was vice chair last session, and we have a good relationship with her. She's from Sparks.
Isn't John Ellison on that?
Senator Ellison. Yeah, Senator Ellison will be on the Senate Natural Resources Committee.
Trivia. The year that John was initially elected to the county commission in Elko, you were elected that year. I was elected that year in Norm.
He was the president when I came
Yeah.
to NACO. On the Senate side, it's newly elected state senator. I have her name written down somewhere. From Southern Nevada. Where'd she go? Hold on. I will get back to you, but she's new, and so Senator Ellison will be on that committee in the minority. Senator Hansen is on that committee in the minority. Senator Scheibel, I think, is on that committee, and who am I missing as the third member? I don't remember. We just did get notice of all of the various committee members, and I will. Yeah, I just got them yesterday. I thought I'd brought a copy of them along with me, but anyway.
I think my point being is usually the people that are chairs of committees have experience with the legislative process or in the legislature, and I just find it odd that when you have a committee chair who does not have experience, they're going to have to prove themselves a little extra to Norm.
All right, any other questions for Jeff? Additional discussion on this item? We will move to item 13, which is a discussion and possible action regarding water rights applications that have been filed with the Nevada State Engineer. And those are in your backup. Jeff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, in your backup are, excuse me, the monthly reports for September, October, November. In September, well, actually throughout the entire 3 months, you may notice or may have noticed a number of applications in Basin 153 Diamond Valley for, 1 acre feet or 2 acre feet. And what those are is part of the water rights retirement program allowed each applicant to maintain up to 2 acre feet of water per quarter section of land for the purpose of mitigation to establish a cover crop and then eventually either continue to use it for that purpose or convert it to stock water or whatever, so that there's at least some water associated with that land from which the permit has been retired and you're making that conversion from agricultural use to some other use. So you'll see a lot of those in these applications. For example, Barty Land and Livestock, Deanne and Moyle Hicks and Denise Hicks, excuse me. So there's quite a few of those. I'll just point out a couple in here that we may want to come back to and then talk about, but I'll go through very quickly. I think the ones that you may want to have a little bit more discussion on are 93898, which is September, page 3 of the September report for Nevada Lithium Corporation. And then hold on. Let's see, and then
939, 68, 69, and 70.
I'm sorry, which ones?
The GABs.
Oh, well,
P2 GABs. Or you're not that far
No.
yet. Oh, sorry.
So, and then in October, on page 3, White Mountain Ranches LLC. So that's 93949, 93950, 93951. And then as the chair had indicated, in November, on the first page, 93968, 93969, 93970, which is P2 Gabs Inc. And
Commissioner
that's it.
Strickland, are you on the phone? Commissioner Strickland?
I am, Chair.
Oh, good. You might want to listen to this next portion. I want to specifically address the P2 Gabs Inc. That's 5,850 acre feet of water that they've filed on in Gabs Valley. And Jeff, while you were talking, I found their preliminary economic assessment for this project. And P2 Gabs is they are a precious minerals and copper mining company. And I'm gonna read from their PEA. There is no source of water on the property at present. However, groundwater could be accessed on approval of a water drilling application. A water permit was obtained historically for the Gabbs property. According to the State of Nevada's Division of Water Permit website, permit 50803 was held by the Omega Resource Company for the Sullivan property, and the specified use is for processing and mining. Newcrest acquired the water permit along with the Sullivan property from Arametco. After field investigation in 2007, it was determined that either no well was drilled or it was abandoned. Due to the well's location, Newcrest withdrew its interest in maintaining and perfecting a well. The permit's current status is listed as withdrawn. So isn't that's a closed basin, right?
Well, it's certainly over appropriated. The perennial yield is 5,000 acre feet, and it is, and right now the commitments are over 18,000 acre feet. It's designated, and it's also has an order with a non-use of irrigation. So, and typically, I'm sure you all know this, but when I review these monthly reports, the first ones that I review are the ones, when you look under CHG, change, are the ones that at least initially appear to be new appropriation applications. I could not find anything in the file that would indicate that there is a base permit that they're trying to change here. So if you're talking about a new appropriation of almost 2,000 acre feet of water, I think it's something you probably want to look at.
Yeah.
Jake has a question.
Madam Chair.
Oh,
and that-
yeah, Jake.
So as you mentioned, if you total those up, it's over 5,000 acre
Yeah.
feet, but they are applying for just 1,950 under 3 different permits. So it'd be a total combined duty not to exceed 1,950 acre feet.
Okay, thank you for that. No, you wouldn't. No. So thank you for that clarification.
In terms of timing, that was, those applications were filed November 15th. They were returned December 3rd. Typically, those are returned if there's missing information or questions from the division. So the clock has not started ticking on the protest period, and it won't until or unless it's sent out for publication, and at which time there would be 4 consecutive weeks plus 30-day protest period, so another at least, 2 months, up thereabouts.
Commissioner Strickland, are you the board's liaison to the Nye County Water Board?
Yeah, so we've got a meeting on Tuesday, so I'll bring this up as concerns that came up during this meeting so that they can put it on their agenda to discuss at the next meeting.
Okay, that's terrific. Thank you.
That'd be perfect. Thank you for bringing my attention to that. Means everything to us here. Thank you.
Jake, how did you determine off of the information that you have that it
Yes,
was only for the 1,950?
I just pulled the applications themselves,
Yeah.
and it says in there that there's multiple wells. They're applying for just a total combined duty of 1,950.
Jake, if you don't mind, Madam Chair, I didn't see anything in here that would suggest that there's a base permit, a valid base permit.
No, so their application is an application to appropriate,
Okay,
not to change.
okay.
Thank you. Questions concerning the water filings?
Do you want to go back to the other one that we want to talk about?
Which one, Jeff?
Jeff, this is Nancy.
Nancy, go ahead.
Yeah, Commissioner Boland, go ahead.
Let's circle back to those White Mountain Ranch applications.
I think that's just where we were going.
Yeah, because there's some background on. All of these applications do belong to the White Mountain Ranch, all right? And they're change applications for type of use, point of diversion, and manner of use, all right? The problem, and the Esmeralda County Board of Commissioners actually voted to protest these when the time comes. Our big objection to these is their paper. They haven't been actively pumped in years, and this ranch circumvents the Nevada water law by filing for the two, you get your extension for 5 years, your proof of beneficial use is 5 years, and then generally there's an automatic extension for another 5 years. Well, before the automatic extension time hits, they file another change application and start the clock all over again. So the last time any of these waters were actively pumped would have been 2011, and that's when a proof of return to use was filed on one of the parent permits. So I just want you to know that that's what our big objection is to these, and if they are returned to active duty, it'll constitute additional pumping in that basin. And we just found out when we got the 2022 pumpage report, it increased by 6,000 acre feet, which is probably because of this ranch leasing out its water rights or using more of them.
Thank you, Commissioner Boland.
Nancy, isn't there a problem that this basin crosses state boundaries into California?
Yes, it does. But, you know, the thing is that like that money that we're returning to the state engineer would be a good use of that, to have a couple of his engineers go through and actually look for situations like this where it should be a cancellation or a forfeiture of these rights rather than allowing them to keep, you know, filing changes on them, to keep them on the books.
Commissioner Keys.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. This is Commissioner Keys here, and Chair. This ranch has been approached by the large lithium boron mining project.
They've been approached by what?
The lithium boron mine project, Rhyolite Ridge, the Ioneer folks.
Oh, Ioneer.
That's where this water is proposed to be moved to. So these excess water rights that White Mountain Ranch has is proposing to transfer them to the Ioneer Rhyolite Ridge Lithium Boron Project. But like Nancy said, these rights have not been used for many, many years, so they're excess rights. Plus, we have additional pumping for the last year or so by the White Mountain Ranch for additional 6,000 acre feet, which puts us over the perennial yield by about 6,000 acre feet. So we perceive this as a problem. We voted Tuesday to protest these water right change orders, and I believe they may be rescinding them and changing their plan for water. But we're going to hold off from protesting at this point until they let us know what they're going to do for sure. So this has been an ongoing question about this big mining project. They need approximately 3,500 acre feet annually to operate. So they'll need to get roughly 4,500 acre feet and then take the little bit of a trim back from agricultural to mining. So we're in negotiations right now at this time to try to solve this problem, to eliminate, maybe find additional source of water so they can rescind their application here. So we may want some help from CNRWA if we do go to protest this, we may ask for help.
When does the protest period close?
Well, I believe it's early next year. I don't know the exact date. If they withdraw this application,
Madam Chair,
it will start over again, they'll start again with another application.
Madam Chair, it would be the same timeline as the applications in Nye County we're talking about.
Oh, okay.
So
if I can just interrupt for just a moment. So applications were submitted, but they were returned. So
They were lacking a map.
right. So the protest period, you couldn't even calculate what that would be until such time that the division makes a decision to publish them in the newspapers. Once that happens, then we've got 60 days.
Okay, so I think the board is on board to protest if this goes forward. We didn't want to miss a window here, so we did vote on going forward if we need to.
Okay, thank you. Anything else you want to add to this? Nancy, anything else?
No, but, we would like to know that the CNRWA would also protest if Esmeralda County needs to.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think we can make a decision on that this morning. Yeah.
We do have that policy in place that we adopted a couple
Yes.
years ago where we would support a county's protest. I think the issues have been identified. I do feel that we could take action, that if Esmeralda County protested that we could follow suit.
And it is agendized for possible action related to the applications that have been filed. All right.
So we can keep you informed. I'll
Please,
talk
yeah,
with
please.
Jeff as things progress. All the while, we'll be termed out at the end of this year. We have a new commissioner that may take this position in my place. And he's sitting right here.
Yeah, let us know how the negotiations go, please.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Will do.
Yeah, Madam Chair, and I guess for the rest of the board as well. I mean, we do have the policy. I've got it here, and, you know, as Jake indicated, you know, it's up to the board to determine if it meets the conditions, which, at least based on my reading of the policy, if you want me to read it, I can do that, but it looks like it would. In this case, though, because it's sort of conditional, you know, but I would say, I would ask the county, and I guess pose this to the board. I mean, it sounds to me like there are two sort of issues here related to these applications. One is, are the rights for the White Mountain Ranch valid rights based on, you know, pending extensions of time, which may or may not have been granted, so I'm not sure I understand that. And secondly, when I read these applications, because they are change applications for point of diversion, place of use, manner of use, what all that means, and sort of the parallel or example of why this might be of interest to the board is because I was going to talk about the Solidus applications that were filed in Buena Vista Valley by Pershing County. And in that case, similar because the mine, Solidus Mine, owned all the water rights, but yet there were concerns from citizens in the county, and the county ended up protesting all 17 of those applications, and we helped them out by doing some review of the model with Dave Berger. So I'm just wondering, you know, if this is more of a technical issue, you know, as far as the modeling is concerned, because the model is not part of the application. We have not seen the model, and I don't know that you have. Or is it more, or also the concern about whether these are even valid rights to begin with?
I believe.
If I might, Jeff, if I might, the main concern is whether or not they're valid rights in the first place.
Thanks, Nancy.
Okay, so, and the reason I bring that up is because, you know, we do have a contract with Dave Berger to help us look at models, for example. So if that's something that would be helpful to the county, you know, maybe, you know, we could help maybe that way. But if it's more an issue of sort of the standing of the water rights in the first place, then that's a different.
We're not going to know anything until we know what the results of their negotiations are, because there has not been a protest filed yet. Yeah.
Well, if I could just enlighten you a little bit about this negotiation thing, is that the mine has assured verbally the county that they have a plan in place where they would not pump additional water from the basin, all right, that they're working on procuring other water rights to offset this pumping. But personally, my concern is that if these are not valid, and when I look at it, I don't see that they are, because it's been a paper, you know, play to keep them on the books, all right? So once they get transferred to the mine and the mine does start beneficial use, then there's going to be a certificate issued, right? So after this mine's gone, they will revert back to the White Mountain Ranch as good water rights. So actually, if it does, change goes through, it's going to benefit the White Mountain Ranch tremendously, because they won't have to keep filing all these change applications for the next 30 years. So that's kind of where I'm coming from on it.
That helps, thank you. Ralph, any final thoughts?
Nancy's pointed out
Yeah.
quite well, so that's
All
our
right.
concerns.
Thanks very much. Yeah, Jake.
And Jeff mentioned it quickly, but it's, we've kind of gone over it. It's the Nevada Lithium Corp application in Nye County, so I'm thinking maybe Commissioner Strickland wants to listen in on this too, but application 93898. So they're asking for new water. The basin's over appropriated. They're requesting 2,700 acre feet. If you read it, it says they're estimating the amount of water use based on Thacker Pass. And then it says that they'll supply the state engineer with their expected net consumptive use at the earliest possible date. So they applied for a water right without knowing how much they're going to need,
Yeah.
trying to tie it up, and the basin is already over appropriated. That's Basin 146, Sarcobatus flat.
Sarcobatus flat.
So just wanted to highlight
Yeah.
that it would be a new water right, not a change application.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for pointing that out. Deborah, did you get that? Commissioner?
Yes, thanks, Jake. Thanks, Chair. I got a lot of follow-up to do. Thank you.
All right. If,
One other comment, if I may, on this.
Oh.
On this item, unless
Yeah.
there's any questions about any of the applications. As I was mentioning, the Central Nevada Regional Water Authority, Commissioner Hudson is a member, of course, representing Pershing County. She also represents Pershing County on the Humboldt River Basin Water Authority. HRBWA did file a protest on one of the 17 applications for the Solidus water change applications in Spring Valley, which is part of the Buena Vista Valley is part of the central region, because of the dewatering and the amount of water proposed for dewatering and the amount of pumping, and the potential for propagation of the dewatering to extend beyond that basin and actually into the Humboldt River Basin. But in addition, Pershing County protested all 17 applications, and the only reason I think that CNRWA didn't protest those 16 other applications is because time ran out. We didn't have a meeting in time to file the applications or the protests. We did work with Pershing County and Commissioner Hudson. Dave Berger and I met with the groundwater modelers for Solidus project. We sat through a 2.5-hour model presentation, and most of that was way over my head. But it was helpful to at least understand what went into that model, all the considerations and things of that nature. But Dave Berger sat with me, and he had a lot more to say about that, and had a couple of follow-up meetings with them, and wrote me 2 memos. And at the end of the day, based on what Dave finally analyzed, HRBWA dropped its protests, and I know Pershing County dropped all their protests. So the point here is that, again, if there's a need, it's probably better to be proactive and protest. In this case, we have some time, I think, than not be able to, and then you have no standing. And so that's really, I think, pretty important. And I was going to make one other point about all of that, but I forgot. So I guess, we'll just leave it at that as far as the Solidus project is concerned.
Jeff, let's jump right into your item 14, your report to the board.
Okay, thanks, Madam Chair. A few things to report on. For the board's information, Chair Easley and I will be attending a Mineral County Planning Commission meeting this coming Wednesday. There has been interest over the years in reaching out.
Interest on our part.
Yeah, to reach out to Mineral County about the idea of potentially becoming a member, or at least being involved. In previous years, the response has been, not officially, but we can't afford it, and Mineral County's like a lot of other rural counties with limited budgets, so we understand that. I did try to reach out to the chair of the Mineral County Board of Commissioners a couple times. I know he's, got other duties and so forth, and plus, there's been some vacancies on their 3-member board, so I hadn't heard back. And then I reached out to former County Commissioner Jerry Tipton to see what she thought we might want to do, and suggested that we initiate all of this at the Planning Commission level, and thought that would be the place to start. So I prepared a short PowerPoint presentation on CNRWA, some of the things that we do, and we'll be providing that presentation on Wednesday.
Where do they meet?
I'm waiting to get the agenda. It's somewhere in town, though. Maybe at their one of their buildings, and I'll get that to you. But one of the things that I want to mention to Mineral County is, I mean, that's potentially a big step, and there are procedures, by the way, for a member county to join CNRWA, and they certainly fulfill the requirement of having a portion of the central hydrographic region in their county, and I think
They have a big chunk.
I think, yeah, the majority of their groundwater basins are within the central region. They've got quite a few, obviously, in the Walker River Basin, but also there, may be an opportunity for them to participate in these meetings and be involved without becoming a full-fledged member for this year or even next year by being a government partner or whatever, would be allowed under our bylaws. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody was okay with that. And then if they are interested and want to do that and eventually move forward with becoming a full member, then it does require an affirmative vote of all the member counties of CNRWA to accept.
Because we'll have to adopt resolutions individually, I think.
Yeah, to support
bring them
bringing in a new member. And then the last time we did that was with Humboldt County.
Right.
So just letting everybody know about that. The other thing I wanted to mention is, since the board approved paying the registration fee as part of your consent agenda for one board member from each member county to attend the NWR, Nevada Water Resources Association Annual Conference, that means that there are 9 slots open, and if you are interested in attending that and having CNRWA pay for your registration fee for the conference, not for any of the other classes or, hotel or any of that stuff, let me know so I can get you registered. And we'll take care of all that for you, and then we'll just have NWRA bill CNRWA as opposed to having to go through the county, and then we reimburse the county. It gets messy. And then also, if you are interested, and even if you are not 100% sure that you're going to go, it might be worth your while to make a hotel reservation at the Nugget, Sparks Nugget. That's the host hotel. The cutoff for their conference rate is December 15th. I don't think you need to do anything other than make a reservation. If you end up not going, then you can always cancel that reservation, I believe. And so that's that. And then the last item I wanted to mention, it's in your packet, is a letter that I wrote on behalf of a grant application by DRI to the US EPA, and this has been going on for some time. DRI reached out to me about CNRWA's interest in being a lead applicant with DRI on this project, and then I said, well, we can't do that because we're not meeting in enough time or before your application is due. So I can't make the commitment to be a lead applicant, but I think we can, I'm willing to stick my neck out, if you will, and support the application as a collaborator or partner. But the idea here is that they're seeking a pretty significant grant to focus on $1.25 million to focus on working with primarily rural counties on engaging stakeholders in those counties and a process by which counties can update their water resource management plans. And of course, all of that is very much aligned with CNRWA's policy, with CNRWA's advocacy and being a proponent of Senate Bill 150, which requires all counties and cities to have a plan and update it every 10 years by law. And it turns out that the Nye County Water District was then selected and agreed to be their co-applicant. So just wanted to make you aware of that. If you were reading this letter and the proposal, you weren't confused or surprised, but if they get the grant, I think that's a huge opportunity. to do that. And the other thing I would mention, there has been some discussion about trying to find some funding, which we've attempted to do the last legislative session to help rural counties with their water resource plan updates. And, you know, these plans, if you're going to do it right, require not only community participation, but a lot of technical expertise that counties don't necessarily have for consultants and verification of data and, you know, all of those sorts of things. So we'll see how that goes. And that's my report.
Thank you, Jeff. Questions concerning Jeff's report? Item 15 is for board member comments. I will open this up to the board. Jake.
Thank you. I'll be quick, but I think this is going to be important to a lot of counties.
To where?
A lot of counties.
A lot of counties, okay.
And others. So the final order and decree for the Diamond Valley adjudication was put out by the 7th Judicial District Court in November. And just this, so then that starts the 30-day period for the notice of entry of that and whatever to be put in the record for people to determine, to kick off an appeal process. Well, that ended this week, and the state engineer appealed that decree themselves. And the so far one water rights holder in Diamond Valley has appealed it, and then the Department of Justice appealed that based on the BLM's claimed public water reserves on 66 springs in Diamond Valley. So we will be in front of the state Supreme Court on this issue. The BLM public water reserves have not yet been tested in our state Supreme Court.
Oh, wow.
So this will be the case that will set this.
Has that been scheduled yet?
No, we're still in the very early parts of the appeal. So essentially, this started a 30-day period for other parties now to determine whether they want to appeal or not, or to join on. So even our county commission hasn't made any decisions on that. But we just talked about public water reserves under the Baker case. It's an ongoing issue, and this is something I think, you know, this will basically set the case law in the state on what is a valid public water reserve on BLM land in the entire state of Nevada. So this has already gone in Idaho to the Idaho Supreme Court, in Colorado to the Colorado Supreme Court. So state law still controls a lot of it. But in this case, you know, just be aware that this is moving forward, and we'll keep you updated. It may be even some presentations or things in the future. I know some of Schroeder law offices, many of their clients are affected by this. It's where the BLM had come in and filed claimed public water reserves on the top of vested stock water rights, some irrigation waters on public lands. So I think this is going to actually set quite a bit of precedence in the state. And so it'll be an important case to follow and that for us to be involved in, because it could go, you know, many different ways, and it really could set it.
How do you see us becoming involved?
We'll just keep you up to date. I don't know.
Okay.
There may be some amicus opportunity in front of the state court at some point. but
Okay.
We'll just keep you engaged.
Yeah,
as things
thank you.
go. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Jake, do you know, or can you tell us what the objection from the state engineer's office is?
So all that's been filed is a notice of intent or a notice of appeal. The appeal itself, we won't see until another, you know, a few more weeks. So we don't know what their objections are at this point.
Okay. And the public water reserves, those are different or not from the Public Water Reserves 107?
These are public water reserves.
Okay,
107.
because we do have a policy statement on Public Water Reserves 107, the Central Nevada Regional Water Authority policy statement on.
Maybe we need to dust that off.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I said.
Assess whether our policy is up to date, if it needs any
Yeah,
modification.
that's a good point.
Yeah, I can
It
tell
needs to
you
be
that
amended.
as far as I'm concerned, it's up to date because when Commissioner Goycochea was still on this committee, he asked for that policy, and I did a lot of research, and I don't think much has changed in terms of the history or status of Public Water Reserve 107s, and so I mean, I'll go back and review it, but I think it's pretty up to date.
One thing I will mention, there's a current adjudication that's going on in Buena Vista Valley. And the BLM's also claimed many of these
Okay.
public water reserves there. And the state engineer followed the same process there in whether to grant or not. And I don't know the status of that, but there, so I'll just real quickly, the state district court overturned every public water reserve.
Really?
And so that's, the DOJ is now arguing against that. But there are other basins where this issue is an ongoing thing right now. And so having that clarity in front of the state Supreme Court will be important, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this ruling is about as impactful as the one that we just talked about,
Yeah.
I think, or could be, I guess.
Commissioner Keys.
This will be my final meeting here with you guys. Probably will not be on after this day or after the end of the fiscal year, or excuse me, this year. I'll be termed out. Trying to get on board a new member here, Fred Perez. I believe he will be on this committee. The board hasn't made that decision yet. It'll be made after the first of the year. Just think this is a great organization. You guys really mean a lot to rural counties like ourselves. You've been very helpful to us over the years, both Joni and Jeff and everybody else. Norm, you've been a great
Ralph,
asset.
we will miss you.
So I mean, we have so many things going on in our county, from a sleepy little county, agricultural county, when I first started 12 years ago,
Yeah.
to all this huge solar farms, the huge lithium discovery in our county with the demand for water. All this demand on water has really opened our eyes to what we have to get on board with, up to speed on everything. And we are updating our water resource plan. We started it 2 years ago. Then things are changing so fast that we went ahead and tabled it for now, and we're going to readdress it again.
Yeah,
because
that's
the water demand is
problem.
has increased so much in our county.
The issues are so big in Esmeralda County, you don't have enough arms to get your arms around it.
We all wear so many different hats. We do the best with what we have, and we ask for help when we need it. And we really appreciate all your help over the years.
You have no county manager.
It's on the agenda for next year for the new commission to decide on. We budgeted money for a county manager, but we may be taking applications real soon. Thank you.
I thank you for your being our eyes and ears, you and Nancy, into those issues. One of the things that has amazed me by being involved with this organization is how differently water rights operate in different valleys, different basins, communities, than what I grew up with in Basin 101, Newlands Reclamation Project. Just totally different, but we need your eyes and ears, everybody's eyes and ears. Not a dumb question out there. If there is, I'll ask it.
Unless there are any other board member comments, we'll move to item 16 and set the date, time, place, and possible agenda for our next meeting. Jeff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I mentioned, first of all, we would typically meet in 3 months. So in the past, that's usually occurred around January, February. In this case, let's see, this would put us into March, early March, and the legislative session starts February 3rd. I don't anticipate much happening the first few weeks of the session. It's usually just presentations and such. And the Humboldt River Basin Water Authority is meeting on the 21st. So my recommendations would be, and we have not seen a NACO schedule, so that's the other thing. But I would say, and then also these pending applications that we talked about today, I think we want to try to get it either on the February 20th, or our next meeting, February 20th, or March 7th at the latest, would be my...
Let's shoot for the February.
February 20th?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll see if it's available.
Yeah. Only because
hopefully it's a Friday. Hold on. No. 21st is a Friday?
Oh, well, then
okay.
that's
Well,
what
then
we
that's what I meant.
Oh, it is?
Oh, no, yeah, 21st is HRBWA.
Oh, okay. So then we want to go into March.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I was thinking, hold on a second.
Yeah, that's all
here.
right.
No. There might be something earlier in February.
No. That's okay. we'll go with the March date. I know you said typically not much happens in the first couple of weeks, and I'm just operating under Murphy's Law. If we go too far out,
Yeah, I don't think we want to go past March 7th,
Okay.
but I do think that, since I can't read a calendar, the HRBWA is the, when did that happen? HRBWA is the 21st, so actually, well, I'm sorry?
the 21st is NACO? And a... Yeah,
21st is NACO? Okay. I didn't
that's
know.
February 21st. March 21st.
Oh, March 21st.
Oh, okay.
But as far as February is concerned, I mean, it is.
Well, what did you say about March 7th?
Well, there's February 7th, 14th, 28th, and March 7th.
7th. March 7th? March 7th, going once, going twice, sold. Okay, March 7th.
Pam, right now, does that look pretty good? Okay. We may end up having to reschedule HRBWA. We set that, well, we'll see. We'll talk about that at the time.
How about February 28th?
We just set it for March 7th. Unless you want to meet the 28th, I don't care. What does everybody want to do? It's March 7th. Yeah, I'm not hearing anything. Item 17, general public comment. This is our second public comment period. Again, this item is devoted to comments by the general public. We take no action on matters that are raised under general public comment until they are placed on an agenda for action. Is there any final public comment?
Yes, Madam Chair, this is Kelly McGowan. I'm a Deputy Administrator with the Division of Water Resources.
Hi, Kelly. Thanks for joining us. Please, go ahead.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate Jeff mentioning the public listening session that we intend to hold in Fallon on December 17th, and I left some information in the chat, a little bit more information about that listening session there in the chat for you guys to look at. And I'm asking if you would please distribute the announcement. I'll make sure you have a copy, Jeff.
I have some
But
on
if
the
you
table.
could distribute the little flyer that we'll send out to your constituents. I know a lot of the actions that are taken here within our division have an impact on a great number of people, and we just want to make sure that they're allowed the opportunity to come in and ask questions and make sure that we're understanding their concerns. So we'd appreciate that. And I also wanted to take a moment to mention the Nevada Water Initiative. So we had 2 pilot areas that we conducted the initial investigations, one in Railroad Valley and one in Pine Valley. And so Monday, January 6th from 2 to 3 p.m. at the Current Community Center in Current, Nevada, we're going to hold a community update meeting. And so it'll be an opportunity. We'll have folks from our office, the U.S. Geological Survey. And
Kelly, what time was that again? Monday, January 6th, what time?
From 2 to 3 p.m.
2 to 3. And Commissioner Strickland, that this is, they're going to be meeting in Nye County.
Where at Nye County?
In Current.
Oh, yeah.
That's easy to
Okay,
get to.
are we going to have some follow-up on that, an invitation, please?
Yes, I'll make sure that this is not gone out publicly yet, but I thought I'd take this opportunity to give you a preliminary date and time. But I'll make sure that we get this to would it be to Jeff? Would that be the most appropriate person to?
Please.
Yes, it would.
Okay.
And thank you.
Oh, you bet. Yeah, we're looking forward to it. They've conducted about 1.5 years of data collection in that area. And so this will just be an update and overview of the work and the information and the data collected so far, and allow for any public questions or concerns to be addressed. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Is there any other public comment? With no additional items being offered, public comment is closed and this meeting is adjourned.